Hello there, I'm Boo, and I like drawing, maximizing my hours in all the Pokemon games to find Chinese, and I really love to complain about lore in World of Warcraft. My biggest tip to all of you who want to level fast: create the character before you actually want to sit down to level, because this might take a while otherwise. Hello, and welcome back to a new episode on the channel. Today we're gonna have a little bit of a shorter video in anticipation of the new patch. It's coming out in a few days, and I thought today I give you a little look behind the curtain at how I like to level my characters. A few of you have asked me over the months how I always level up characters so gosh darn fast, and well, why not make a little video about it? Now, very important thing first. This is not a video on how to level the fastest way possible. This is just how I like to level my characters, and I pride myself in being relatively fast if I want to. There are more efficient ways, there are better ways that are also out there on YouTube for you to see. Just so we have that cleared up. Now that we have that cleared up, let's get to it. Alrighty, now I start where everyone also starts, and honestly this is sometimes the hardest part, because to everyone who is a true alcoholic, or to everyone who has ever tried to create a new character and wasn't really sure what they want, you can be stuck in this part of World of Warcraft for forever. Now, given World of Warcraft does not have the biggest amount of customization options, there are some races that have more than others, and there are some that have almost nothing at all. That is very cool, especially if you look at the fact that if you want to have your Arathi pointy ears on your Kultirans, I think you have, you have this hairstyle and this hairstyle to show them off. But that is beside the point. Now, I know that I definitely want to level a warrior again, which is great because that already means that kind of the hardest part has already been decided. If you are on the time crunch, you should definitely decide on that before you start creating a character, because times and times again I was dead set on a human warrior, for example, and somehow I ended up with a troll priest. That is just the creation process of a character sometimes in an RPG. Anyway, we want a warrior. My biggest tip to all of you who want to level fast: create the character before you actually want to sit down to level, because this might take a while otherwise. And right over here we already have a decision that will speed up your leveling process quite a bit, because as you probably know, all of the allied races start with level 10, and the Drakthir do too. Now, all of the OG Death Knights, they start in the OG Death Knight zone, which is amazing and I love it, but it's definitely a little bit of a questing thing, especially if you do it for the first time. So this is definitely not fast, but you will do a lot of levels over there, so keep that in mind. If you choose one of these weird Bolvar Death Knights that I absolutely do not respect, then you will just spawn on the top of the Icecrown Citadel, and that's gonna be that. You won't have a questing experience because they were too lazy for that. If you choose one of these guys, boom, you're level 10, you're already in the main hub, and you can start questing your little heart out on level 10, because in case you don't know, from level 1 to 10 you still have to do like the starting zones, and you cannot choose a class spec yet, so most classes play a little bit bad from 1 to 10. Funnily enough, from 1 to 10 is kind of a drag. I don't know if they just want everyone to play allied races or what's up with that, but in my opinion, level 1 to 10 is never fun on any class. Now, once you have created your character, with many races you will see this screen. I mean, not the Sunstrider Isle on everyone, but you will have to either decide to go for Exile's Reach or your OG starting zone. Now, for example, if you're Pandaren, you go to the Wandering Isle, and that is quite a lot of questing, but obviously also quite a lot of levels. So, pick your poison. I am not insanely fond of Exile's Reach. It is a very quick way to get from 1 to 10, so keep that in mind. It is rather boring, especially if you've done it before, but it's definitely the fastest way to get from 1 to 10. If you do it the old-fashioned way and go to the old leveling zones, for some reason it just takes longer. It's not not made to be a quick tutorial to teach you how to do World of Warcraft, so keep that in mind. That is pretty much what you prefer. Obviously, all of the speed runners will tell you to go to Exile's Reach because it's just faster, that is the fact. But I tend to just choose what I like better, because then I usually also like to stick with a character, which is also something very important to keep in mind if you want to level fast. And because I am not in the mood to make that kind of decision today, I'm just gonna choose a race that starts on level 10, which is, for example, the Nightborn. And before we're gonna click on Enter World, there are a few other things I also like to do the groundwork for before we actually start leveling. Because something very important that if you're an alcoholic, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, is that your character needs quite a lot of backspace. And for that reason, I always like to pick up some Wilder Cloth bags, which are for some reason so much more affordable than the current newer green bags, which I think only have 2 slots more. Yep. And I also like to pick up a Regent bag because, man, you're gonna pick up a lot of Regents. Why not just buy the bigger one, which is cheaper for some reason? Auction house prices never have to make sense. And also something that I like to pick up are some glyphs, because I really like to customize my characters. So I already picked up a few for the warrior class. There are not that many glyphs for every single class available, because that is something that they pretty much abandoned for some reason, but hey, whatever, Blizzard got a blizz. And also I'm gonna send some enchanted heirloom gear to my dear Daisy. This is very optional. You don't have to send any of this gear at all. You can also just level with whatever you pick up along the way. Obviously, account gear is just very nice to have because you can transmog for a very cheap price and you can enchant it, and especially the weapons you could pick up from Hellscream in the remix and obviously back in their day in Pandaria are just a very nice thing to have. And here we are. Even though we don't look like it, we're just level 10 and we just spawned. And now on to the actual leveling. I always like to go here, even though I don't like Chromie, I definitely like what she has to offer, which is the time walking. Now, there are a few things that will always give you a good chunk of experience. For example, if you level through the introduction of Draenor, you will get your Garrison Hearthstone, you will get your Garrison, and also roughly speaking, up to 10 levels, also depending from where you start. Back in the day when we still didn't have flying all the time, I always liked to, use Draenor as the stretch between 30 and 40 before you got fast flying. But since you can now zoom all the time with dragon riding from level 10 up, you don't really have to do that. But keep in mind that the Draenor introduction questline is always very nice to get those last pieces of experience that you need until, for example, level 70. Which I would never really choose is definitely the Shadowlands. Apart from the fact that the Shadowlands absolutely suck, it is an awful lot of questing. You cannot skip it, so you always have the same storylines that you have to go through, and it's very stale, at least in my humble opinion. Now, what I always like to choose is the Cataclysm. By the way, you can just go into any time walking you want. What these time walking things just do is that they give you the starting quest, for example, for Draenor or for Legion or for the Shadowlands, if you choose them. If you just choose, like me, the Cataclysm, then you just have to quickly do this so it's out of your quest log, and then you're done and free to go wherever you want to. Now, another little thing that I really like to pick up, never mind where I'm gonna go leveling, is at least 1 or maybe even 2 gathering professions. Now, these things obviously give you experience every single time you mine a node, for example, but also depending on what you're mining or what you're gathering as herbs, you can always sell that stuff for kind of good coin on the auction house, so that is always nice. As soon as you learn cooking, for example, you have a cooking daily in Orgrimmar, Stormwind, and all the other main city hubs, and these things give you experience even up to level 80. So it's not a lot, obviously, but it's always something that you can keep in mind if you're just chilling with your level 79 character in one of the main city hubs every day. Anyway, you can do this every day and will give you a little bit of experience. Before I show you anything else though, I wanted to quickly point something out. You have this warband map to everywhere all at once, which is really nice because it shows you everything on the map and it also gives you all the flight points. Now, I think that it also takes away all of the experience to discover stuff, which would be not that cool, because believe it or not, even if you're not an earthen, you still get a lot of experience points from just discovering stuff. So keep that in mind. Unless you really need to have a flight point somewhere, maybe don't press this button until you're level 80, because I think that is just a lot of experience points missing. If you still get the discovering points, then please correct me in the comments. I've never clicked this before I was level 80, so I have no idea. However, I'm gonna click that now because I want to take a look at our map. Now let's talk about questing, because that is really the bread and butter of how I really like to level up a character, because I love questing. If you don't like questing, maybe give it a try, because honestly, it is kind of fun and it is a big part of World of Warcraft. And maybe you're gonna be surprised, because it ain't that bad. Don't listen to the haters. It ain't that bad. Anyway, I have a few zones that I would really like to share with you. So one of my all-time favorite zones is Winter Spring. Winter Spring, you can only start with 15. That is the case for many zones for some reason. Don't really ask me why. Blizzard really never touched upon them again. It's just 15. Deal with it. Winter Spring has a ton of quests, a ton of stuff that you can gather there, and a ton of rare mobs, because rare mobs are a big part of why the old zones, say Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, are so good for leveling, because rare mobs give you pretty much every single time you kill them almost as much experience as a single quest does. So keep that in mind. If you want to do your leveling somewhere else, for example on Northrend, that is my favorite continent, as I've said it time again and again. But if you want to level fast, then Northrend really isn't the place to be, because there we have the old questing system, and that one can be rough, because you're gonna have to look up a lot on Wowhead, because some of the old quests are bugged, they're very hard to understand. You're gonna run somewhere and then you realize, no, I had to gather something else before I run here. It's just old WoW. So stick with the Cataclysm and older zones if you want to level fast. That is just my little tip. Also goes for Burning Crusade, for example. By the way, Burning Crusade sometimes is even worse than Wrath because it's older, but hey. The next little zone that I love to visit is Felwood. Felwood and Winter Spring are very nicely to do after one the other, because, well, they're neighbors. So if you want to learn a little bit of Night Elfen lore as well, then Felwood is always a cool place to visit. Also, you can mine a lot of mithril and thorium in Winter Spring and Felwood. So if you like to gather old recipes and old regions, then don't forget to pick up your gathering professions. Next one is Hyjal. Now, Hyjal is a more Cataclysm zone. You have to be level 30 to even access it, because you have to be able to fly there. Blizzard never touched upon that again after they gave us dragon flying from the start, so don't ask me why it's still level 30. They're just never updating this stuff. I also really like to go to Ajara, that is right on top of Orgrimmar. That is a zone you can only go to as a Horde player, mind you, because that has become a Horde only zone. But if you're a Horde player, or if you're leveling at least a Horde alt, that is really a cool place, especially if you like goblin stuff. Now, honorable mentions go to one of my favorite zones, the old one and the new. Thousand Needles is also on Kalimdor. You can do it on both sides. It has a cool little thing where you get a boat. You don't really need it anymore because you can fly now. But back in the day, man, that was really some cool stuff. So also maybe if you don't want to zoom everywhere on your mount, check that one out, get that boat, and feel really cool about it. Also, if you like deserts like me, Tanaris and Silithus are always worth your time. Silithus has not that many quests, to be honest, and most of them are just kill quests combined with a kill the big enemy 2 quest. So they're very easy, and also Silithus is full with rare mobs. In general, all of these zones, like I said, are so filled with rare mobs, and all of them also drop rare items that you can either sell on the auction house or use for yourself so you get more transmog. Moving on to the Eastern Kingdoms, I have another few favorites of mine. For example, the Silver Pine Forest and the Hillspread Falls Hills, one of my absolute favorite zones forever. These are only for my Hardies, mind you, but just to make it up to you, one of my other favorite zones to level fastly through is Lochmodan, or Lochmodan. I think you pronounce it Loch in English, but I'm not completely sure. That is an alliance only one. exactly like Westfall. Both of these zones are very nice. They're very smooth. You get so much experience, especially in Loch Modan. And you also have a lot of rare mobs and it's smooth questing because they were designed for a very, very low level. The lower level they are designed for, the faster you can level through them because they were designed without riding in mind, let alone dragon flying. So the closer you are to a main city hub, the easier the questing experience is gonna be. That is just something for you to keep in mind. Also, especially if you chose skinning as your profession, Stranglethorn Vale, both the Stranglethorn Jungle and the Cape of Stranglethorn are amazing if you just want to skin your little heart out and get a lot of leather. Because, you won't believe it, in that jungle, most of the inhabitants are, animals. Another favorite of mine that is only for the Alliance side once again is Duskwood. I just love the vibe in Duskwood. I love the storyline in Duskwood. It's just always a grande time. And last but certainly not least, as long as we're still on the Eastern Kingdoms, I also love especially the Eastern Plaguelands. The Plaguelands are not what they used to be, but I still feel like they are so much fun to quest through and they're so much fun to just visit and have that nice OG Scourge feeling. So if you like that too, then maybe check those places out. And now to my favorite little outlaw of them all, the Ghostlands. The Ghostlands are an old BC questing zone. And now you might say, but Boo, you said BC is not that good for fast leveling. That is true, but this is a starting zone. And as long as you're a horde player, you're gonna have a lot of quests being offered to you here. And because it's the old questing system, you just gather so many quests at once. Then you go out, do them for half an hour, and you come back and you hand in 10 to 15 quests at once. And that is always an amazing feeling. A feeling that I think is lost in almost every single zone except for Loch Modan. And one of my still all-time favorites, the Hinterlands. The Hinterlands still have this big cluster of quests that you can pick up, not as much as they used to have, but they're still almost a little bit untouched with some of the quests that you can do there. So definitely check out the Hinterlands. The Hinterlands you can do on both sides, by the way. Now, this is also a little bit of a relic of old times when you couldn't dragonfly everywhere. But what I always like to pick up is my Dalaran Hearthstone. Like I said before, that thing only has a cooldown of 20 minutes, so you can always use it to quickly get a lift back to Orgrimmar or Stormwind or, well, Legion Dalaran in general. And it's just one little quest, especially if you've already done it, because then you can skip the entire scenario on the Broken Shore. So keep that in mind if you want to zoom quickly from one continent to the other. Now, another thing to mention, on level 20 you can activate the war mode. This is especially nice if you are in time walking, because you're not gonna meet that many other people in time walking anyway, and especially not anyone that can just, kill you off in war mode. So just click this for 10% extra experience, and also sometimes some really nice PvP talents depending on your class. Now, one more thing that I forgot to mention is obviously you can also buy yourself some mount equipment that goes into this little rider down here. I always like to pick up the Comfortable Rider's Barding. This makes sure that you cannot get dazed from anyone attacking you while you're riding. Obviously this does not work in PvP. A lot of other people also really like to buy this thing that makes you run over the water. Again, pick your poison. I rather like it if I'm not getting dazed. Also, if you have the Anglers on Exalted, then you can just buy this in Pandaria and don't have to spend a little fortune in the auction house. And now we come to maybe the more exciting part for some of you, because what if you made it to 70? What do I do then? Because, then you are always stuck with the newest expansion. As soon as you hit 10 levels before the end level, you always have to go to the current expansion. No more time walking, no more free choice. You always have to go, for example, right now to Dornogal and Khazar. Before that, you had to go to the Dragon Isles. There was just no way around it. And there are a few things that I like to do as soon as I hit the current expansion. Now, if we take another little look onto this map, then obviously you can always pick up the main quest lines, which if you are an avid quester and also you don't mind sometimes just going to some of these story relevant delves, then definitely do that, because it will just show you from one way to the other and you don't really have to think much. Now, I don't really like to do that, partly because, like I said, almost every single quest story of the main story in The War Within is interrupted by at least one delve that doesn't really do anything for destroy your experience bar and also just costs you a lot of time. What I like to do is a little mixture of everything. I usually always have at least 1 or 2 gathering professions, so I just get some professional equipment so I have deftness to gather stuff quicker and then just fly around. But what I also like to do is, especially if there's a time walking week up, to queue for the time walking dungeon, because those give you a lot of experience at the end of every dungeon, more than the normal dungeons for the expansions, by the way. You can always weave them in also with the other questing. Especially if you're a damage dealer, you will have more than enough time in between waiting queues to do some questing, to do some gathering, to just do whatever you want. And what I also like to do between dungeons and gathering and maybe doing some of the side quests that are usually always marked on your map is I like to do delves. Now, this depends a little bit how comfortable you feel with the class that you're playing, also which class you're playing, and also how bad/good your gear is, because delves are okay, especially if your Bran is on a very high level. But what you should definitely do is every single time you go into a delve for the first time, there's gonna be a quest. Pick that quest up, save that quest for later, because the first few levels are always super quickly done, as you probably know, but as soon as you hit the 75, 76 mark, it's starting to get a little bit slower and slower and slower. Keep those end quests from those delves for then, or even like for 77, because they're gonna give you a big chunk. I think it's up to 1/3 to 1/4 of your level, and with that you can often just, zoom through the last 2 levels without doing anything. And that's pretty much all there is. I don't think I've mentioned it in the beginning, but obviously it also depends on your class. For example, if your class can be a tank or a healer, you can get much quicker dungeon invites, and maybe you just like to spam dungeons. I've done that, especially during the Mists of Pandaria time, and I kind of got it out of my system, and now I just really like to quest. I'm a pretty fast quester because I know pretty much all the questing zones and quest lines that are there in World of Warcraft. Something to keep in mind is, for example, you can just do your lore master on the side with the characters that you're leveling, which is also always very nice because you feel like you're doing something for the greater good, but you're also leveling your character. But that's pretty much it. Again, this is not the fastest way, this is just how I like to do it, and since a few of you asked, I thought, hey, why not make it a little video? I really hope that you enjoyed it, and in case you did, please consider leaving a like or a comment. It helps and I appreciate it so much. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, maybe consider doing that as well. And I can't wait to see you for the next video, which is probably also gonna be another waiting zone for the next patch video. And until then, bye bye!